It's almost time. I have 13 minutes. But I'm going to film anyways because I'm going to be in this room for at least the next 13 minutes. And I think I'm going to make it. November 11th is my clean date. 6 years. 6 years ago today, I was sitting in Wilmington in a place I never thought I would be. I don't know where I had these thoughts of just, I was better than these people. This wasn't me. You know, it felt like I was in jail and I wasn't a criminal. But looking back at the way that I was living my life, I had to be there. Let me just give a brief history. I started sneaking cigarettes when I was probably about 12. I started drinking, like parties and stuff like that, 13, 14. I think I smoked pot for the first time when I was 14, but it wasn't like a everyday thing. It picked up when I was about 16, where I was either drinking every other day, I was smoking a pack a day, smoking pot every time we could get our hands on it. And I never really got in trouble. I functioned, I lived a normal life. I never had any consequences. My friends never really had any consequences. I thought living that lifestyle was okay. Now, from 16 to 18 is when I tried any drug I can get my hands on, but I never became addicted, if you will. I was an addict. I needed any kind of mind-altering substance just to get through the day. I wasn't gonna get physically sick without it, but I was an addict. And then when I turned 18, maybe almost 19, I was introduced to the pills that got a lot of people hooked on pills and eventually heroin. The little 15 and 30 milligram, I think they were oxycodones. That is when I realized I needed something or else I was going to get sick. That was like the first time I thought to myself, holy shit, I'm a drug addict. And I was so disappointed in myself, but I didn't stop. The reason I actually stopped that time was an ultimatum from a girl that I was seeing. I did my best. I bought Suboxones off of a guy that I knew. I went through detox on my own with those at home for a few days, and I was pretty good for maybe 4 months. But of course, after 4 months, I thought to myself, well, as long as I don't do it like every day, like if I did it one day and I would skip 2 days and then do it one day and then, not do it for 3 or 4, like I thought it'd be okay. But that one day turns into 2 days in a row, and then 2 to 3, 3 to 5, and then all of a sudden you're back on. I mean, it happens every time. And that's why, like to this day, if I go to the doctor for any kind of pain, I get non-narcotic pain medicine because I know how easy it is to be right back where I was, and I never want to go back there. The second time I got clean, I got caught. My family, pretty much, they knew. And I had the ultimatum, get clean or get out kind of deal. So my mom was living up in Salisbury, and I went and stayed with her for 4 or 5 days, had Suboxones again, and I detoxed up there. After 4 or 5 days, I went back to Dagsboro, and I was there for about 3 weeks, and I decided I couldn't stay in the area because in my mind, the area is what was making me use. I felt like I knew too many people that I could easily get a hold of and get drugs, and I couldn't be there. So I moved up to, ironically, where I'm living today, Northeast PA, close to the New York border. And I stayed up there for about a month, and then I moved back to Berwick, my old hometown, and I got a job at a pizza place in Bloom, and I was up there for about 5 months, and I was clean. When I say clean, I wasn't doing pills. In Bloomsburg being a college town and me being 22 years old, it's only natural that I go out and party. I met all new friends in a college town. I remember it was like the month from the end of February to like the last week of May. So the weather was getting nice. Block party happened. I'm working at this pizza place about 70 hours a week. I'm getting paid cash, and I'm doing okay. So I would work these 10, 12-hour days, and I'd meet up with some buddies, and we would go to the bar, and we would drink and have a good time. Then someone brought in some blow. Cocaine. I'm sure everyone knows the nicknames for drugs. Sometimes you'll hear me refer to something as dope. I'm not calling pot dope. Dope is heroin. Nowadays, maybe, years ago, dope was pot, but dope is heroin now. I'm going out after work on my day off, drinking, doing blow, and all of that I felt was okay because I was working my ass off, I was making good money, and I wasn't waking up looking for a fix. I was waking up, I was going to work, I felt like shit, hungover, this or that, but I wasn't doing opiates. So in my mind, that was okay. And then when May rolled around, I knew the summer was coming. I knew this little college town was gonna die down. But you know what doesn't die down in the summer? Ocean City. Home. Where my mom and my dad and my sister and all my friends over the last few years, that's where they were. And I thought, yeah, I was up here 7 months altogether, clean. I think it's time to go back. So I went back down south, and first night I came back, I remember it was a Wednesday, hump night. Come on, it's 2010. Hump night was in full swing. I drank, and all my friends were happy to see me, and they said I looked good. I looked better, but and I made it that whole summer, going out and drinking, working at the pizza place. Everything was like it was when I wasn't doing opiates. Yeah, I was drinking, I was smoking pot. I would occasionally do any other kind of drug I got my hands on, but I convinced myself as long as it wasn't a pill, I'd be okay. Then one day, I had a toothache, and one of the waitresses at the shop said, "Oh, well, I have these." And they were the 5 milligram versions of what I was hooked on. And I thought about it, and I'm like, I know how this can go and this and that, but they're 5 milligram. I'm a big guy, so they'll knock the edge off, the pain, and I'll be okay. And then the next morning I woke up, and I called her again, and I got more, and they were gone by noon. And then I had to call one of my other friends to see if he had anything stronger, and of course he did, because he's a true friend, and I was back on the boat. This time was probably about a 6 or 7 month period again. I would say from like maybe mid-October to like first week of April. I wasn't confronted, but I felt like the jig was up. Like things were happening in my life that I was gonna get caught any moment. That's the one thing about my drug use, is any time that I would start using, the only people who would know I used would be my dealers, because I didn't use with anybody. I didn't tell anybody. I hid it from my whole family the best I could. You know, they were probably well aware of what I was doing, but they didn't have proof. And I was getting away with it. But I felt like it was, the walls were closing in. So I got a hold of another buddy, and he had Suboxone, and I did my little 3 or 4 day detox just to get rid of the worst of it. And I remember not being able to sleep. That was the worst. Like, the physical sickness was gone, but I wasn't sleeping at night, and I started going to the gym. Now, this time period would be, before this last period, the longest time that I stayed clean, and it was probably the best time for me of being clean, because I took it seriously. For a while, I stopped drinking. I didn't smoke pot. I didn't do anything. And I was going to the gym, and I was taking it serious. We'd go out at night. I'd be the designated driver for a while. And, yeah, things were pretty good for, I would say, a year-ish. And I reunited with an old fling, and she happened to be using. And to this day, I don't know what made me do it, but I did. But by this time, pills were harder to come by, and if you did find them, they were ridiculously expensive. So she was doing dope, heroin. And I stupidly said, you know what? I think I want to do that too. Instantly, I remember that feeling, the warmth. I didn't get the sickness, because like a lot of people said when they do opiates, they get sick. I did that the first time, second time I did opiates, I did get sick, but not with this. I immediately felt like wonderful, and that's all it was. That one night I did it, and I was back on full force. I actually knew a guy who was a heroin dealer. Even though when I was clean and I wasn't using, I knew what he was doing. He never offered it to me. He knew my past, and like, we were cool. So when I all of a sudden started calling him for that, he was hesitant, but he did, because money, obviously. And so I immediately had a hookup, and I immediately started right back where I left off, doing dope. Every day, day in, day out, waking up. If I didn't have money when I woke up, the number one priority was how to get money. Because you need money to get drugs. And then, once you have money, you have to find your way to get drugs. I had to do all of that before 11 a.m. because I had to be at work. So every morning, if I didn't have anything saved from the night before, I had to be up at like 8 in the morning just to go running around and make some deals and sell this and do this and get a good deal on this to sell. And, I'll tell you what, if I had that kind of drive and ingenuity to put towards something constructive, I would have been a millionaire by 25. But that's how powerful the drive of drugs are. This time period was the worst for me. I was mixing coke and heroin like on the weekends. During the week, it was just dope. On the weekends, it was coke and heroin. And I overdosed. And, you know, I was out of it. I was brought back by someone who knew what they were doing. I didn't stop using. That didn't scare me. I don't think anything could have scared me into stopping. I remember on my birthday, October 11th, 2013, I turned 26 years old. And I remember I did heroin, cocaine, ecstasy, and I was drinking Crown Royale and Jack Daniels pretty much all night. And I kept having this thought throughout the night that I was gonna die. I wasn't gonna make it to 27. And I woke up the next morning fine. Everything I put in my body the previous night, I woke up the next morning and there was nothing wrong with me. Oh, there was a lot wrong with me, but I survived. A couple weeks go by, November 9th, 2013, and something just clicked in my head, and I was either ready to leave this existence or get clean. This time, no one had caught me. Nobody gave me an ultimatum. I just had this thought in my head that I was going to die, and I didn't want that. Even though I was depressed and I didn't have anything besides, like, I had my family and stuff, but back, you know, when you're on drugs and your vision is so cloudy, you can't really see the big picture. You only see like this far in front of your face. And it was either, you know, die or get clean. And I called my friend Jesse, and I asked him, it was November 9th, and I asked him, it was a Saturday, could you take me to detox tomorrow in the morning? And he was like, yeah. And I said, awesome. And I told my dad what was going on, and he said he knew. It was pretty obvious at that time because of the amount of drugs I was doing. I didn't look the greatest. I'll see if I can throw a picture up from around that time period. I mean, I've never been happier. You know, it's like I've gained weight since getting clean. Like, gradually every year I've gained more and more, and that's becoming a problem too, which I'm trying to work on. I'm going to work on, but I'm clean. So I'd much rather be heavy and clean instead of skinny and fucking addicted to bullshit. But he said he knew, and he said he couldn't make me do anything. That I was 26, I was a man, I had to do this on my own. And I said, okay. So then I called my mom and I told her what's going on, and you know, she was pretty much like, again, like, how many times, you know. And I told her I was going to detox in the morning, and she was pissed, you know, but she told me she loved me, you know, and keep her updated and let know what's going on, you know, because like my mom's that type of lady. Like, regardless of what me and my sister ever did in this world, she would always love us, you know. She'd be pissed at whatever, but she loves us, just like our dad loved us. And so it was like 1:30 in the morning. I knew I was going to detox, you know, in a few short hours, and I got high. It was November 10th because it was 1:30 in the morning. I got high. I fell asleep, and 7:30 rolls around. Jesse texts me. He said, "Hey, I'm out front." And I packed, I had my bag somewhat packed, but closed everything up. And I knew that I had to have something in my system to go into detox. And I knew I had to be showing signs of withdrawal for them to take me in. And I had 3 bags of dope left, and I did them all. And we took our 2-hour drive. I felt like I was turning myself in to jail. Like I was a wanted man, and I was sick of running, and I was turning myself in, and I knew it was going to be shit. But also there was like this little bit of relief, because shortly I would be where I wanted to be. And I get to detox, and I have a book bag, and I had like magazines and a book. Like I was going on like a hiking trip, and they're like, yeah, like you can't have any of that. Like you could take a book with you, one, but all this other stuff, you can't bring it. I'm like, fuck. Okay. Grab the book. Actually, I still have the book. I've read it a few times. It's a book about the journey of capturing John Wilkes Booth after he killed Abe Lincoln, and like where they went. It's pretty cool. So they're doing intake, and I was high. I was high from the night before, and I did 3 bags of pretty good dope, before I went. And they're asking me questions, and I'm like not nodding out, but like I'm just like, yeah, whatever. And I guess at one point they asked me, have I ever been on Subutex or Suboxone, and would I like those as some kind of agent to help with the withdrawal. And for some reason I said no, because I didn't want to get addicted to those, because I knew if not done properly, Subutex and Suboxone, and especially methadone, all those drugs that help drug addicts get clean, they work. But after the time period is over, the 5 to 7 days, 14 days of withdrawal, there should be no reason anyone takes any of those. But these doctors, they prescribe it in a way that they want you on it for 2 to 3 years. And you take it that much and you become addicted. So I said no. I didn't want any Suboxone or Subutex or anything like that. Looking back at it, it was a good idea. But the next day, it's pretty much the first day of detox. I stayed in my bed and I slept. And they actually allowed that in, it was Kirkwood. And the first day that you're in there, they know it's pretty shitty. So you don't have to go to any of the group meetings or the, anything that you don't want to do, you don't have to, So I would get up around the time where people would eat and I would eat, and I would just go back in my room and sleep. I didn't introduce myself to anybody. I'm wearing scrubs and flip-flops, and I couldn't sleep the whole day, but I stayed in my bed the whole day because I was so nervous and I knew I was feeling like shit. But eventually I fell asleep for the night. The next morning, about, I think it's 8:30, I am officially hating life. I'm sweating, I'm nauseous, I'm cold, I'm hot, I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm full-blown in it. And I see everyone standing in line and they're getting their medicines. And I'm like, okay, good. Well, at least, I'll get something. So I give them my name and they pull my chart and they give me this little cup, and it's got like 4 different little pills in it. but none of them were orange, which is the color of, I guess, Subutex and Suboxone. And I said, hey, yo, lady, what gives? What's here? She was like, well, that's Flexerol, and that's like a muscle relaxer, and that thing is for nausea, and that thing's for cold sweats. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Where's the good stuff? And she was like, oh, no, yesterday, during intake, you said you didn't want any of that. And I said, well, fuck that. I changed my mind. I want it. I feel like shit. She's like, well, no, it doesn't work like that. You would actually have to leave AMA, against medical orders. No, that would be AMO. It was AMA, but I forget what. Against medical authority? I don't know. But you would have to leave, right? And then we have a 2-week period where you couldn't come back. So if I had the two options of either leaving, which if I would have left, I would have just went and got high. I wasn't going to worry about Suboxone or Subutex on the streets. I would have went and got high. But I was 2 hours from home. I didn't know anybody up there. And if I told anyone where I was and the reason I needed a ride, they would have said, nah, you can stay. So I was stranded. And I took the Skittles they gave me, and I took them, and I'm walking back to my room. And like as I'm turning around walking away, the nurse, she's like, oh, we're having a group meeting in 15 minutes. And I was just like, fuck off. Just let me go die or something, please. So I go back in my room, and one of the bigger male nurses comes in. He's like, yo, Rob, meeting. I'm like, yo, dude, seriously? He's like, yeah. I'm like, all right. So like I stand up, and like I'm just like a little bit bigger than he was. And like he looks at me, he straight up says like, dude, just don't give me no shit. I'm like, all right, whatever. I'm taking my blanket, took my blanket, scuttled down the hallway and stuff. Just and I get in there, and it looks like a fucking parole hearing. Just 80% of the people were there on court orders, and 3 hots and a cot. And I was out of my element so much. And throughout that first hour and a half meeting, everyone's talking about what, this was their problem and this is what happened. And I didn't say a word the whole time. As soon as the meeting was over, I went back to my room, but I couldn't sleep. Like, I was sick and I was anxious, and I ended up talking to my roommate, and we just, sat there and we shot the shit, and it got a little better. As the days went on, I started sharing more in these meetings, and I was talking to like the one-on-one psychiatrists in there, and lo and behold, after 6 days, they said, you look good. How do you feel? I said, well, I'm not sleeping, but I feel okay. They had given me a couple options leading up to my departure, and they really wanted me to go into inpatient facilities. They wanted me to go to like Gaudenzia House or a sober living house or an actual rehab. Like they couldn't make you do anything, but they were trying to get me to just go to something for another few months. And I told them, I have a pizza place. I missed a week of work. Like, my mentality was so focused on, I want to get clean and I want to do good as soon as possible, so I can go back to what I was doing, like, just without using. And they said, well, we can't make you do anything, The entire time I was there, they didn't allow smoking. They barely let you outside the facility. They gave you the nicotine patch. And I told Jesse, I'm like, dude, when you come and pick me up, bring me a pack of Reds. Make sure that the cellophane is off the top and the aluminum's out. Like, have one ready. Like, when I come outside, I want a lighter, I want a cigarette. Because, like, and that's how bad, cigarettes are. And I remember I walked out, and there's Jesse, and he's standing there, and he's got a cigarette and lighter in his hand, and I grab him, and I light up, and I remember just saying, man, this shit's disgusting. Like, it didn't taste good. I thought it was going to be like the first cigarette after sex. You know what I mean? I just thought it was going to put me on cloud nine. And, like, I remember, well, it's like somebody left the box of cereal open and in the sun, and then it got rained on and it dried again, and then you tried to light it on fire. Like, it was gross. And I didn't smoke the entire car trip back down. But when I got home and started getting back in the swing of things, it was just a matter of time before I was back to smoking like normal. And to this day, I still smoke a pack a day. So I go to the apartment and I cleaned up, and I must have found thousands of empty dope bags and everything that was pertaining to any kind of drug paraphernalia just got tossed out. And it was a Friday, so I worked. I was at the shop, and my dad was there and talked to him, and it was only 6 days. So of course everybody in my family, they were all still very cautious, as they had the right to be. I broke that trust. My actions broke the trust of my family, and my actions, not my words, were going to be the only thing that would get their trust back. I remember they said if I wasn't going to do an inpatient facility, that I should be seeing a psychiatrist at least once a week, and I should be going to AA or NA meetings as much as possible. They said you should do 90 meetings in 90 days, when you first get clean, and you should do this and that. And I had a pamphlet with all the locations and times. So the next day, which was Saturday, I went to a meeting in the morning, I went to one at night, and then Sunday, I remember that Saturday, I called Matt, and months beforehand, he invited me to a church that he started going to again, and said it was really cool and this and that. So I actually called him the next day after, when I got out. It was Saturday, and I was like, hey, can I go to that church you were talking about? And he's like, yeah, when do you want to go? I'm like, well, Sunday, hopefully, church. He's like, what, tomorrow? I'm like, yeah. And he was like, is everything okay? And then I filled him in, and he was like, okay, yeah, I'll pick you up, we'll go. So went to the meetings on Saturday, woke up Sunday, got picked up, went to church. And I've heard many people say this. Many people who go to church. I don't go to church anymore. That's a whole nother video. But that day when I went, I was supposed to be there. And it was a pretty packed service, but it felt like one person was talking directly to me and my problems. And everything that they were talking about pertained to what was happening in my life. And I cried. I mean, it was what it was. And church was over, and after church walked over to the house next door, and I met Eric and Cherith, and I sat and talked to them for an hour, and then went back to the restaurant I worked, went to a meeting that night, and for the next week and a half, 2 weeks, it was go to meetings, go to a church service, go to meetings, work. That was my schedule. I was staying as busy as possible because I did not want to have free time to possibly slip up. And I make it to an NA meeting in Rehoboth Beach on a Wednesday night across the street from Walmart. And I noticed there was a couple guys who were pretty much just there eating the cookies and having the coffee and stuff. They really weren't there for the meeting. And after the meeting, they asked me for a cigarette, and I gave them a cigarette, and asked them what was going on, this and that. And they were telling me that they were homeless, and they lived in like this tent city that was right behind the place. And I was like, that's crazy. It's cold. It's like, yeah, we're here all year. And I happened to have chili in my back seat in like a crock pot. And I was like, I got some chili in the car if you guys want. They're like, yeah, bring it down. So they brought me down. There was a few other people in there, and I just gave them the crock pot. And, that they started saying like, well, yeah, if, this one needs a jacket, and like, I could use another blanket. And I was like, fuck, stay here. And I ran home to the apartment, and everything that I had anything extra of, even stuff I didn't have extra of, I just loaded up my car, and I went back there, and I gave 2 or 3 blankets away. I gave all my jackets. I had a hoodie for myself, but all my jackets, I gave a couple pair of shoes. I just gave it to these people, and they looked so happy just to have stuff that I took advantage of for a long time. And I had this thought in my mind, like, this is what I want to do. The next day, I talked to Eric and Cherith, and I told them what happened the night before, and I told them, like, this is what I want to do. And, they were very good about, and still are, about, like, organizing. Because they saw it as more than just going out and doing this on a whim for people who needed it. And that's how Soul was born. Soul still goes to this day. They still go out and help people. They're doing excellent. And if you're in that area of Southern Delaware, Eastern Shore, Maryland, you're looking for a good cause to donate to or a church to go to, go online, check out Soul, or Home, I believe, is like the main hub. And that's how I kept busy for the following months. Soul saved me from falling back into my old habits. It consumed me. There would be nights where we would get a lead that there was a tent in the middle of the woods, out in the middle of nowhere, with a couple homeless people, and we would be trekking in the woods, like carrying a big old thing of soup and blankets and toiletries, just looking for someone who needed help. We would set up in like the worst neighborhood in Salisbury, set up tables and feed all the people who needed it and give them what they needed, not just like physically, but like even just people to talk to. Dressing up as Santa, ending up on the news, waking up the next morning with like 150 missed calls, people looking for Santa to come by and deliver toys. Their kids weren't gonna have a good. I remember that Christmas day was so hectic, and all day I just drove around dressed as Santa delivering toys, and it was what I needed at that time to make sure I didn't go back to where I was. And I'll go over this in another video, but eventually I stepped away from Soul and focused back again on working the 9-to-5 grind and figuring out what I was supposed to be doing, and ended up opening up a pizza place without my dad. Like, my dad helped, but not like he wasn't a partner, he wasn't an owner. Like, he gave me advice, he helped me do tile. But looking back at everything that I've accomplished in the 6 years of being clean, I'm just thankful of where it started. And a lot has happened in the 6 years, and not everything's been good. I lost my dad, a little over a year ago, and like, my dad, he's my best friend, and he meant so much to me. And my dad, if you knew my dad, He was a very stern. I mean, he could be fun loving and go out and, but he was very intimidating sometimes. And a lot of people didn't know how to read my dad. And growing up, he wasn't really the type of guy who would say things like, "I'm sorry, I'm proud of you, I love you." You know what I mean? Like, when he said it, it meant something, because he rarely said it, But I knew how much my dad loved me, and I knew how proud of me he was before he died. And being clean gave him that comfort, and gave me that comfort, and gave my family that comfort. And I still struggle with things today, every day. But drug abuse is no longer any concern of mine. If you're struggling with drugs right now, and you're thinking about getting clean, or you're just sick and tired of the bullshit, I don't have to go into what it is. You know what it is. Making the decision to get help will be the best decision you ever make.